Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sara, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode with my co-host, Carrie Bennett. We are really enjoying giving you this show and talking about these topics that seem really complex so that we can help them be a little bit more understandable to the everyday person. I just wanted to remind you to head down into the show notes to make sure you get my free resources and Carrie's free resources. We've both spent a lot of time compiling our favorite list of products, as well as how you can actually implement a lot of these things into your daily life for free using our guides. We also both have amazing courses that you have access to in the show notes as well. And we co-host a course together called Quantum Fertility. We've actually had some quantum fertility babies just born this summer, and we have several quantum fertility pregnancies going on right now where women were told that they were not going to get pregnant, and we have been able to show them the way using these circadian principles and quantum biology, and we're so grateful for this. So make sure you head down to the show notes, check out those resources, check out those courses. And if you are enjoying the show, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave us a comment. And if you're listening on the podcast app, please head on over to Apple or Spotify, leave us up to a 5-star review. Since we are such a brand new show, we want to make sure that we're getting this message out to as many people as possible. Again, we want to make these concepts of quantum biology and circadian biology understandable and applicable to the everyday person. We want you to pull up a chair, come hang out, and enjoy this conversation with me and Carrie, and have a fantastic day. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. I've got Dr. Sara here and Carrie, and we're going to talk about ketosis today. So
this is kind of a continuation of the conversation we had with you last time, Sara, about deuterium. And I think by now people have heard the word deuterium. They're not afraid of it. They know what it is, and they know it can really mess up the mitochondria. And that is not great when we're looking to improve our health or maintain longevity. So one of the ways that we talked about that we can deplete deuterium is through ketosis. So can you just quickly summarize why a high fat diet will help us do that? And then we get into the nitty gritty of how to start implementing it.
Basically, fat is the lowest of all of deuterium, and the more fat you feed your mitochondria, the more deuterium depleted water they're going to make, and it flushes the deuterium out.
Perfect. Simple and easy. Okay, so what is ketosis and how do we get there?
You would take away the carbohydrates or things which could raise your blood sugar, which includes blue light.
Oh, see, this is what I'm happy to have Sara, because no one else is bringing in blue light into the ketosis conversation.
Or non-native EMF.
Oh, yes. It's because a question came up today about blood sugar, so it's on my mind, the blue light. Yeah.
Okay, so let's put it this way, right? The blood has sugar running through it called glucose. And the body, when glucose is not coming in through the diet, the body has a couple of different means of fueling our metabolism. So can you talk about what those means are? Like I maybe talk about gluconeogenesis, because that will play into some of the what happens with non-native EMFs and such, but also then getting into ketosis. So just give us like the 101 on blood glucose, ketones, those sorts of things.
Well, basically with gluconeogenesis is our bodies can make glucose out of pretty much anything, fats, proteins, and we can raise our blood sugar ourselves to a steady amount. That's why we can fast for 3 days, 7 days, because we would pass out otherwise.
Right. So the blood wants to have at least a certain amount of glucose in it at all times. But if we've been not feeding our body glucose and we have a need to fuel ourselves more deeply, we have the ability to produce ketones. So how are ketones produced in the body?
From the breakdown of either your body fat or fat that you take in from diet. Because again, fasting, which mustn't be neglected in what's the deepest ketosis you can go in. So you can use your own fat or fat that you eat. And basically ketones in very simple language are just tiny bits of broken up fat.
And they can go to the mitochondria essentially to be burned as fuel.
Yes, and also they kind of go through a slightly different route into the mitochondria. So the mitochondria actually know whether you got your electrons from fat or glucose, because the electrons from the fat go straight into complex 2 and down the electron transport chain, and out come the goodies. Whereas complex 1 is the leakier one, where it's more inflammatory. So we don't want to run electrons from sugar all the time from our complex 1 to 5. It's a good idea to take the shortcut, go straight to 2, but now and again you want to run through complex 1 to remind it how to work, because it makes a superoxide, which is really important. Just so people know, we're not saying you've got to go into ketosis now and you're never allowed out of it or you're going to die.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think naturally that cycling would have happened, right? People would have encountered some honey, or they would have had less. They would have been in more ketosis in the winter versus in the summer. They would have more electrons going into complex 1. So it's a natural thing that I think would have happened if we were truly living the way humans were meant to live. But these days, our modern conveniences allow us to pretty much run on glucose 24/7. Like I could go to Taco Bell tonight at 4 a.m. and just eat a bunch of tacos and I mean, so I have access to things I never would have had access to.
Right.
So the benefit of what I'm hearing you say is the benefit of the electrons coming from fat and going into complex 2 is that's a shorter journey those electrons have to make. It's an easier pathway for those electrons to go all the way through the electron transport chain to drive the production of water and ATP.
Yes, and they jump over the slightly leaky complex, so it's less inflammatory. So regardless of what people say about keto being dangerous, it's a cleaner fuel to burn. I'm trying to think of an analogy, maybe red diesel versus sort of unleaded or something like that, petrol. So, we can use both fuels, but glucose is dirtier, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have a purpose. We still need to be able to use glucose as a fuel, as in being metabolically flexible. I think you alluded to that, but it's like anything. I say this all the time: the bigger the problem, the more of it you've got to do. And that's the same with ketosis, the same with CT, the same with how long do I ground or see the sun.
Red light therapy, I found, for sure.
Yeah. That's a tough one for people, because everyone wants the minimum, the smallest. I had someone comment on my YouTube channel today on one of my leptin videos. Is there any way to reverse leptin resistance without seeing the dang sunrise every day? And I was like,
good luck. I mean, I know. And there's nuance to sunrise. I don't want you waking up at 2 a.m. right in Iceland. But yeah, when you can see the sunrise, see the sunrise.
Yeah. Broken circadian rhythm is going to create leptin resistance.
But then, being perfectly honest, in the UK this summer, the sun comes up at 4:30 and I couldn't be asked. And then I got some really horrible thyroid labs. I was going on and on about it to Carrie. And then as soon as the sun was coming up a bit later and I got up to see it, the labs went back to normal, except there was one really bizarre result recently, but I think it was actually the labs made a mistake, because I don't think you can have that number. But then I did think, the sunrise does do it a difference. And it's so, the thyroid is so tied into the central retinol pathway and all of that if you've got a thyroid problem and you won't see the sunrise, well, good luck. Have a thyroid problem then.
Yeah, I know. And it's a tough one for people because it's a catch-22. They feel like crap. They're saying, and you're saying, I have to wake up and see the sunrise. And it's like, maybe you take a couple weeks to shift it, but yeah, at some point you got to get outside at sunrise, because people don't realize the layering on effect. Like you said, that central retinol pathway and all the communication that happens through that pathway to the brain. It's such a layering on effect of so many benefits. So I've said this, you've said this, Sarah, you might agree with this, but once a client does that and they get in the habit of basically just appreciating the sunrise and the UVA rise and being out, prioritizing time outside, I haven't had one client be like, that sucks. I don't ever want to do that again.
Right.
I think it's back to the analogy you gave with the pillows and the other thing, and me sleeping in the tent. You're going to be uncomfortable and not sleep very well for a couple of nights or a week. But once you get rid of the pillows or learn to sleep on the floor or see the sunrises, you'll feel better and you'll never go back.
Yeah, that's exactly. So yeah, before we recorded, I was talking about how Sarah's talking about how sleeping on a hard floor. I was talking about having gotten rid of pillows, and it's uncomfortable, but then like it feels so good. I can't even imagine. I go to hotels and I'm like, how do people sleep on these fluffy things? And toss them off.
The pillow I'm sitting on was on the bed, and as soon as I got here, I threw it off.
Try to be a good host.
No, I know I'm only something, and I've got
That's nice, right? I mean, it's nice to see the pillow. It's just but no, thank you.
Back to the sunrises and the UVA rise. We all, being honest about what we actually do, we always see it, and it's like, even though the clocks change, we all just changed.
We all migrated. I mean, we didn't. Nothing really changed here. We were all getting up at sunrise.
Yeah, and everybody sees it because we just open the door.
Alexis runs in and out when James is up, I bring him out there,
and then I keep opening it when the UV's out, because I'm obsessed with UV, and so it comes in a bit. And we actually, it's so like religious that it's done every. Yeah, and it's like really, I think it's like one of those non-negotiables.
Yeah.
It's definitely become, it's non-negotiable. And for sure it's non-negotiable. And for me, I try not to obsess about needing to do it for 2 hours, but the days that I can be outside in the morning for 2 hours, I feel like, I mean,
right. Yeah.
Even better than I already normally do.
Oh.
I think we have to go back to the ketosis now, because I think on grades of like the deepest you could possibly go is dry fasting, because humans can be like a camel, that we can make our own water out of our own fat, just not as well as a camel. And then when it comes to that in context of how did I get here, I didn't teleport, I flew, obviously. Yeah. But then I was saying to Sarah, I think categorically for traveling these days, ketosis is not deep enough, because I fasted for like 36, or I think it might have been 48 hours before, during, and then when I got here, and I felt totally fine. And I would say I tried not to drink because, airplane water and food. And I think if you say, right, I'm fasting for this journey, you're not going to be tempted by, oh, I'll have an egg, I'll have a grenade bar. You're categorically, I'm fasted throughout this flight. And it made a really big difference. So that would be on the scale of what's the biggest ketosis you can do, dry fast. And then obviously more sensible, you can move into sort of different things, which we'll probably go into now.
Yeah, I did it. Fasting is actually easier, and not medical advice, because it can be dangerous if you're not going into it with great mineral status, you're not going into it with great nutrient status. You want to make sure
you have to be able to burn fat.
Right. And you've got to be fat adapted. It's not like you just wake up one day and you've been eating McDonald's and decide to dry fast, but I did actually, I think the longest I've ever done a dry fast was 40 hours. Yeah. And that was actually pre-pregnancy. I was trying to deplete deuterium. I was in deuterium depletion, and I said, let me just throw a dry fast in here. And I got to 40 hours, and I probably could have gone a little bit longer, but I was advised to stop.
Well, so, yeah. That's a good dry fast. I mean, it's a long dry fast. I've had people do not as long. I mean, not even near as long, maybe 20 hours. And they've noticed, not necessarily for deuterium depletion, but they've noticed a resetting of dopamine receptors and dopamine sensitivity.
It's easier to me than water fasting, because I've done a 7-day water fast, and I had done 48-hour water fast, 72-hour water fasts. That 40-hour dry fast was easier than doing like a water fast. To me, I felt less desire to eat, less just overall, since I was like, everything was just off. Like it was easier to me than doing the water fast. But yeah.
And also, I think it's like a trade-off, that if you're willing to do a dry fast for 48 hours, it would be the equivalent of a 5-day
water fast.
Yeah. So if people are wanting to eat sooner, then,
just dry fast.
And there's also benefits for resetting the immune system if you fast 72 hours with either a dry or a water fast. People who are prone to UTIs, I would say, don't do dry fasting.
Interesting.
What? Yeah, sure. Maybe load up on methylene blue beforehand.
I would bring it to kind of get cleansed. I was doing deuterium depletion, and I had done 2 rounds of IVF, and I wanted to kind of detox my body from that, because I knew I still wanted to get pregnant, but I was like, I need to get rid of some of this, this stuff I just put in my body for, 2 months straight. So that was the other motivation for me to do that, and get in that really deep ketosis, because it does really help with cellular cleanup and things that have accumulated in your body.
So
he dropped a massive bomb there, Carrie, because it hadn't tweaked to me, like do a dry fast with a load of methylene blue, because I won't go into all my travel hacks because that's a whole other course and project, but I did use methylene blue and my pee was still blue 4 days later. That's how much I use. But like that bomb you've just dropped there, that's a very interesting little tip. But yeah, we'll go back into the
we can talk about that my brain just went, and Sarah knows this, but my brain just went into methylene blue and its relation to like being good for UTIs, right? In the bladder, it concentrates in the bladder.
Yeah, you want to hold it there rather than, because methylene blue, if you take a high dose like I did, you want to pee more. Okay, yeah, that's kind of really, I'll try that.
Try it and keep me posted. I'd be really curious. Okay, so back to ketosis.
I know
this is the thing. We don't get to just chat like this with Sarah. So like
also a lot of the things we're talking about is UTIs as a female. Like I never get ill ever, except I do get the odd UTI, and it's like it's really a problem once you've had a couple and you have, I won't use antibiotics, and I did resort to it once, but I think there's only so many times you can use antibiotics. That this talking about different ways to deal with UTIs is really big for women. I mean, men get them as well, but not like women do.
Yeah, especially in that perimenopausal window when the estrogen starts to be really wacky, or even in menopause when estrogen is lower. That's when I see a lot of women start having them, and it can be very painful and very problematic.
And I think, what we're dealing with at the moment, especially like with your daughter, you can't just keep, antibiotics we can use. But what happens if we get a resistant one? What do we do then?
Then you're screwed. Yeah.
It's going to be nice to find alternatives for sure to antibiotics.
Yeah.
I think we could, that actually would be an interesting thing to go into at some point as well with people, because while antibiotics absolutely have their place,
they have a time and place, because I think they can save lives. It's like, how do you draw the line, or where's the balance?
Yeah. Well, and we're of that generation. I don't know if you, but like, my mom lovingly so would bring me to the doctor no matter what I had. It was like, here's some antibiotics.
No, it's funny. When I was a kid, I would like throw them behind the couch. Like my mom would give them to me and I would throw them behind the couch. And I remember we were moving out of our house when we were 9, and she found like 30 of the pink pills behind the couch. And she's like, you never took any of the antibiotics. And I was like, no, they're disgusting.
Even then you knew.
Pretend to take them and then spit them behind the couch.
That's funny.
We actually had this discussion the other night, because I'm saying I'm fine. I just can't stand them being used willy-nilly, like in farming to make animals grow fatter, or in the UK, stupid people that go to the doctors because they've got a cold and want antibiotics.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There are times when you really need them. Yeah. And also I think it started off because people go and have surgery and they just give them an
prophylactic. That's what they did. Anytime I had any surgeries during IVF or that they would always say, start taking these antibiotics the day before your egg retrieval and 3 days after. And I never did. Just because I was like, well, if I do end up getting pregnant from this, I don't want to completely have my microbiome just wiped out, because that's what they do.
But you can opt out to the antibiotics.
That's
compulsory.
Yeah.
For surgeries. And
I just didn't tell the doctors because they were on me about taking them. And I was like, yeah, I took them.
And I think things like, I think we had another discussion, like if it's a serious infection in a child, like ears, sinuses, the amount of problems you can cause by not doing anything. It's more don't use them for no reason that really annoys me, and save them for times when people really need, and it might be you that really needs it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So back into ketosis. This is kind of what behind the scenes conversations legitimately are like with us. It's funny. Bounce around. Hey, what do you think about this? So back into ketosis. Water fasting obviously can get people into ketosis. I'm always a fan though of, I like for people to do the sunrise stuff for a little while first, because I want your leptin, right? I want your leptin to be able to signal, get rid of some fat. And then your body says, oh, you're not fueling me, but we need fuel. So let's pull fat from storage. And so obviously, there's some prep going into a water fast potentially that your body wants to do. And then also the idea that the majority of people are not metabolically flexible, which you talked about before, meaning they're burning the sugar pathway, right? They're in this sugar burning pathway. But also, I do want to talk about too, there are people that are burning the ketone pathway, too much of the ketone pathway. So we'll go into both, but how does you take someone from this sugar burning pathway? We're going to get, what are the percentages or the ratios or what would you be an ideal way to take someone into ketosis when they want to know, Sarah, what do I eat? Tell me how much fat versus protein versus carbohydrates.
Oh, there's so many ways to do this, because I think one of them is to not measure anything. And if you just stop eating carbs and just carry on eating fat and protein and see what happens. I know it sounds really unscientific, but because to do it properly, you would need to know how many calories do people eat to stay the same size. And then I would use that number and I would probably make a 1-to-1 fat to protein and carbs keto diet very accurately and start them on that. Or just tell people, just take the carbs out of your diet and just eat fat and protein and see how you go, because you have to, some people can't deal with numbers or weigh food, and other people would be so horrified at the idea of, well, that's so disorganized, and both ways work really well. But the problem with both of those is that's pulling the plaster off all in one go, because if somebody's coming from the standard American, I would probably say to do paleo first, and then to do low carb, and then to do keto.
Yeah, I love that. And you hit the nail on the head. I am not keep track type of person, right? So it sounds unscientific. You're a scientific person. I'm a fairly scientific person. I actually would much rather do it that way that you described, where it's just like, hey, let me just get rid of the carbohydrates and see how my body feels. I also do test blood glucose, though. It's like, let's see where I'm at. Okay, eating this many eggs here with some butter. Okay, great. I ate this. What are my ketones at? So I remember when I was first playing around with getting into ketosis, I tested my blood ketones all the time. It's like, what am I at? What am I at? What happened after I exercise? Where am I at? And so I found that a fascinating way to learn what worked for me, right? Like kind of me eating what I thought was ketogenic and then testing my blood glucose in response to different things. I found that very, very helpful. I also liked what you said about the transition, because I did transition by switching one of my meals first, right? It's like, right. And then, okay, I got used to switching one meal, and I'm going to make 2 meals ketogenic and make all 3 meals ketogenic. And that was a very good way to kind of work my way into it as well.
Also, that's a really good way, the meals, but because people are obsessed with losing weight. I think if they want to lose weight and they've heard, keto will make me lose weight, and they start having a really big fatty keto meal for breakfast, and then they're going to eat their usual lunch and dinner,
they're going to gain weight.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to go, this is shit, I'm not doing it. So but for a person who doesn't want to lose weight and doesn't mind staying the same weight, and they're doing it for a health reason, your way. And that Beth Zupek Kenya, who trained me, that's how she said to do it meal wise, because she's very much, we measure the calories, we make sure the person can't possibly overeat anyway, and we substitute out meals. But for the general person, like you said, that eating like a massive keto meal and people are frightened of fat. And then if they did that, they would then turn around and say, I gained weight on keto, but they didn't even do it properly. So I think that's the caveat there. But I 100% agree with you. The meal one is a really good way to do it as well, if you kind of understand about the Randall cycle and mixing carbs and fat.
Exactly. And what you alluded to too is also, I think sometimes people think that they have to eat a lot of fat, right? They'll get these numbers. And I think that's another one too. It's like, well, I need this MCT oil. I have to have a lot of this MCT oil. It's like, look, I'm in deeper ketosis when I'm consuming this MCT oil, but I'm not losing any weight. It's like, well,
right? Too much fat. Yeah. Cause I've done that before. I've eaten like ridiculously, like 90% fat, 10% protein, and gained weight. But I had ketones that I think my highest was like a 6.0.
Yeah.
I mean, my ketones got crazy high, and I'm like measuring like, whoa, I've never seen ketones like this before. However, I was gaining weight still in deep ketosis. Glucose was also good too. I mean, my glucose was like a 68, 70, super low, but I'm still gaining weight because there's too much fat in the diet. So I think people have to take, you can gain weight doing keto if you overdo the fat, or if you just overdo the calories, period, which fat is calories, right? Energy.
Yeah, definitely.
So then do you recommend people test their blood ketone levels?
Yeah, definitely. I use a Keto Mojo because I think the glucose ketone index is really important, but also Beth said that you can work it all out from just glucose because the ketones are here and there and everywhere, whereas the glucose and the ketones are always going to be they're reflective of one another. And the good thing about Keto Mojo is I've got a practitioner account, so people can just upload their data and I can see, and then there's the accountability thing because I think an important part of keto is you've got to decide, I'm going to do this and do it properly. From what we've just said, you can't just do it for 6 days and then go and have a binge day because you'll ruin it all. You've got to be in the mindset of I'm making a life change. And especially, we always say, do it with somebody else. And I think, and like you said, when I first got into it, I went through so many boxes of ketone strips and it's all in my Keto Mojo. I could publish a paper on my data because all I do is just test all the time. Yeah. And you learn tons about, oh, I exercised and this happened, and it's this amount when I get up in the morning. And, I think people get really like joy out of the measuring. You probably did. And it sounds, no, you're just trying to make me buy more stuff. But we love, basically, it's motivating. We're so self-centered, anything about our own data and information. And it's really motivating to have a meter because it's all about you and it's so interesting. And I think it's such a good investment. And also it's a really amazing way to share data with doctors and practitioners because you can easily transfer it all to somebody to say, can you have a look at this? Or can you look at this every day to help me stay on track?
I love that. Is there a continuous ketone meter?
No.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It would be really interesting just to see. Well, it's when your body, when it goes low and you're in ketosis because your body is using.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're always low in the morning. You think they'd be high because you fasted, but they're not. And also you can go and exercise and it'll use them all and it'll be really cool. Yeah. Then somebody else might go and exercise and it pushes them up.
Yep. Yeah. And I've seen the cortisol awakening response too, throw people off. Yeah. And people are just get mad about it. That's why I highly recommend you test all the time at first, which is an investment. I found like the first, 2 or 3 months I was testing all the time, but then it's like you start to see patterns and trends and you're just like, okay, I don't test anywhere near as much. I just know, right? I know what I'm eating and
start to feel when you're in ketosis and when you're not. And when I was doing carnivore, I didn't test for ketones at all. And then I started testing my ketones and I was making like no ketones on carnivore. My blood glucose was on the high end as well. It was like 90s, low 100. And I'm like, that's not good. So that's when I flipped my carnivore diet, started purposefully eating more fat and taking the protein down. And so I think one mistake people make is overdoing the protein because it doesn't have carbohydrates in it, but they don't know that there's kind of an insulinogenic effect that can happen with the too much protein.
And also you release more cortisol to digest the extra protein as well. And if you've got carbs with it, you can digest the protein without the cortisol spike.
Exactly.
And I think the blue light still is a real sneaker for ruining your keto.
Oh yeah.
So go into there. Let's dive into there because I don't think people are aware of this. So talk about the mechanism behind how blue light can ruin ketosis.
When you're in blue light without other wavelengths, as in inside with the window shut or even without a device on, POMC, which is a peptide, gets broken up into something called ACTH and CLIP. And ACTH pushes your cortisol up and CLIP is an insulin secretagogue. So it's basically, you get the biological effects of your blood sugar going up and even your body trying to store that without even eating anything. And that means if you're in that environment and you'd raised everything, like your blood sugar and your insulin, and then you ate food on top, the chances of storing it are like really high. And the chances of your body not going into ketosis properly, because there's the glucose you made from the light and the glucose you ate. It's just a way to basically interfere with the goals that you're trying to achieve. So, it's all about eat outside. If you possibly can, open the window, don't eat with your phone around you, don't watch TV and eat. And if your diet's not working and you've done what I've suggested, the whole, let's look at all of the numbers. And I've done this with clients, everything's perfect and it still won't work. It's like, right, the light is going and then the ketosis it's all started to work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so I just want to reemphasize a couple of things there. It's why we're seeing so much of the literature saying, specifically studying artificial light at night, but why the artificial light is connected to diabetes and obesity, and then also cancers, right? Because those could be driven by metabolic disruption as well. So it's all connected to the light, which is why I always work with light first. And I don't know, maybe Sarah, you might be different, but I always work with light first before I touch anyone's diet.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, because it's much easier people are very emotionally attached to food, and they don't want to show me a food diary because they think I might criticize it. But whereas just talking about people's daily activities and how many hours of phone and what kind of lights, people are much more happy to talk about. And it's actually easier to change, even though, it seems like a nuisance to have to get different light bulbs or see the sun rise. It's much easier because it's very natural to do that. Whereas to change our way of eating, our brains and bodies are designed for us to eat. And if our brain sees high energy food, it thinks, oh, good, I want this to store. Whereas you'll just slot into a circadian rhythm naturally, whereas the food thing, it's kind of can be more of a sort of like, I would view it as a harder change. But I think it depends on the person. Me and Sarah very much, if something's going to work, we'll just do it straight away, like pull the plaster off. But for other people listening, I think it makes keto much easier if you do the circadian first, because you've got rid of the cortisol problem and you've already established good sleeping. And a lot of people that tell me, oh, I can't sleep on keto, it's like, no, it's not the keto, it's the light. And that's why, because you are teetering on the edge. And the same with fasting. Fasting can push your cortisol up. So if you're teetering on the edge with high cortisol because of too much blue light and screens, yes, a fast, again, could push you over the edge, but it's the blue light's fault, not the fasting.
That's a great point. I love that. I love that. And so let's then say, so that the whole point now that we're talking about with this ketogenic diet is that what you're doing is you're sending hydrogen to the mitochondria that are deuterium depleted. Yeah. And as those mitochondria receive those hydrogen, that helps them to be really good at making ATP, and they make more deuterium depleted water. Is that correct?
Yeah, with the fat's got more electrons than carbs anyway. So if you've got more electrons going in, you're going to get more ATP and water coming out. And also the hydrogens that come from the fat are much more likely to be a nice hydrogen, not a big deuterium that's more likely to come from glucose.
Perfect. And so this is another way that we would suggest you do deuterium depletion, right? In conjunction with some of the other things we talked about in the last episode. And then this is the foundation upon which, if you do want to buy deuterium depleted water and consume deuterium depleted water, if that's in your budget, if that's something you really want to commit to, that's perfectly fine. I've seen great numbers when people do this and then they lay on deuterium depleted water. But to do deuterium depleted water in a high non-native EMF toxic blue light environment while still eating sugar all year round, it's not necessarily going to move the needle in the way that you would hope for that type of an investment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like if you buy something or hire a coach or join a membership group or buy deuterium depleted water, you've put an investment in, and now you can basically bloody well stick to your way of eating and your circadian stuff now, because and psychologically, I would never even say that to a person, but once they've spent money on stuff, they're much more likely to stick to it. And it's even half the time with really expensive weight loss supplements, it only works as people have spent all this money and they subconsciously eat less.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. So anything else, Sarah's?
Oh, I know, the keto desserts, because I used to be like so anti it. Yeah. I've like, what have I made? I've made chocolate ice cream, chocolate mousse, keto raspberry ice cream. We're starting to make the base for a keto cheesecake, but literally all of this contains like 5 ingredients, and then I'm making a chocolate cake. And when I've added up all the ratios of everything, it's like a 4-to-1. So it's really keto, and it's all quite low protein. And one of the recipes has got avocado for the chocolate ice cream and mousse. And you'd think it sounds disgusting, but it was really good with the chocolate sauce, because I've been combing through all the keto desserts and there's always something offensive. Like I wouldn't buy the waffle mix because it had almond flour in it. So we're like, okay, how can we kind of make because it's like this perception that keto has to just be meat and some vegetables. But since doing all of these desserts, I've actually thought to myself, this is so useful for teenagers and children, because what I've been doing is like, oh, there's this, here's your meat, and then here's your dessert. But I'm actually using the dessert as the fat. And we've just been using like whipping cream, macadamia nuts, avocados. I'm a massive chocolate snob, so I just totally reject it.
She doesn't like the United States chocolate at all.
I paid like a fortune to ship. I've got green and blacks and Lind, and then I was making a hot chocolate sauce, and I used butter quite a lot. So we've got grass-fed butter, and then I think it getting more and more ambitious. But it's basically, there's this like set of 7 ingredients, and I'll occasionally use stevia if I have to, although I was complaining about it earlier. So I think that's been a massive eye-opener for me in how to make something ketogenic accessible to everybody, especially kids and teenagers.
Yeah, because she's doing it for Alexis. Like, we're trying to get my daughter. She's been keto, but she's
doing really well.
She asks for desserts all the time. And her birthday is coming up. And so Sarah's just been amazing, just whipping up all these keto desserts and experimenting with recipes. And Alexis has been like super happy about it.
We haven't made the chocolate cake yet, because we want to make that. And the ice cream's gone really well. And then we've got chocolate buttons that we've kind of macadamia.
She loves those.
Great. And then it's like trying to make pancakes. What I know, I just do the eggs in a certain way, fry it really thin, and say it's a pancake. And then we've had cheese and things, and it is just like a pancake. The waffles, we'll have to experiment. They should be quite easy, because you've got like that amazing waffle recipe. And then we haven't made the chocolate cake yet, because I've got all the ingredients. Because what I want to make is a cake of one layer here of one flavor, then a filling, and then another flavor here. Because also the other thing we found really helpful are the elements.
The elements, or I say it wrong.
There's the salted caramel one that hasn't come yet. And the
chocolate salt is the one. But she was taking the chocolate salt packet and like making these little pats of butter and kind of dipping the butter into the chocolate salt. And Alexis was like loving that. Like, she loved it. She kept handing us the empty plate. She's like,
more,
please.
And then I think, I'm waiting for the salted caramel. That opens up a new angle of flavors. Because with the cheesecake, I want to make a fruit one. So I need to order some gelatin, which is actually a really good health food. And then I can make the top bit of the cheesecake, and we've got the whipping cream plus the cream cheese, and then the base is going to be a combination of macadamia nuts, something to do with how we make waffles, or something crunchy at the bottom. We haven't invented that yet. And then we'll have a cheesecake, and it's all like still the 6 favorite ingredients and the elements of I would say it wrong as well. They're really helpful for flavorings.
Yeah, they are.
Because I think if you buy keto desserts, like you can get all these crazy bulk
sweeteners, and people have bad reactions to those. I've had people that have like their depression symptoms come back when they have some of these like monk fruits.
I've tried that.
I think it's the concentration that they put them in too, because I don't know about you, but like when I went into ketosis, my sweet taste buds changed, right? And so like all of a sudden you're tasting something that's got so much xylitol or erythritol or whatever it was that I was trying at the time, and you're just like, oh, this just tastes wrong. Like, you don't need anywhere near as sweet of a flavor to it.
Your appetite just goes down in general with ketosis, because my daughter, we've been working on getting her in ketosis. It's been a really long journey, because she would just break into things and we'd keep foods here. And now we have it down to a science, and she's really in deep ketosis now, which has been great, but her appetite has changed. Like, she won't just sit and just eat and eat and eat. So it does take the appetite down eventually. And that's what people that told, that kind of were advising us to do ketosis for her. Because she's, I've talked about it on my YouTube channel, but she has had seizures this year. And so that's why we've started implementing ketosis with her. And, knock on wood, so far, so good with seizure prevention. And so,
I'm just happy, Sarah, that like you brought that up with the keto, that like well-made keto desserts, because it has to be
prepackaged crap.
Right. And but like, you have to make this doable for people, right? If they
Yeah.
want to transition their family over into something like this,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to make it doable. And so it's a beautiful way to kind of bridge that gap in a way that provides some really great nutrients and maintains a ketogenic state.
But also, Sarah highlighted a really important point. I would not add the keto desserts until you've done
Get into deep ketosis,
properly.
because Alexis has been in deep ketosis a few weeks now, probably a month, where it's been no cheating.
Yeah, exactly.
And really eating enough fat. And I did use some exogenous ketones to kind of push her in there.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so she's been in deep ketosis for a bit now. And then Sarah just got here last week, and she's been letting her have the desserts the last 2 days, maybe?
Yeah, we have like one a day so far.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, because that's the
She'll
thing.
just, it will bring your appetite up.
Oh yeah, and it's also
overdo it.
Got like sugar problems.
Yeah.
I think any sweetener is going to set them off again.
I wouldn't recommend
taste pathway.
Also, you can do all of what I've been making without stevia. I've just sweetened it a bit because Alexis is a child, whereas I would have eaten the chocolate mousse without any sweeteners.
Yeah, sure.
So it's all like you say, and it's really flexible, like you say, with a family. And I think if somebody's not interested, if someone wants to lose weight, the keto desserts would be like a once a week thing.
You don't want to do it every day. And
yeah,
I think the sunlight piece is just so important if you want to do ketosis, because there's so many appetite regulation pieces that happen with seeing sunrise and UVA, and then even just going outside and exposing your skin to near infrared during the day, like from the sun. There's a lot of appetite regulation that happens from the natural light. And then, like Sarah has talked about so much, blocking the blue light. And so I think I used to just be diet only and just keto, carnivore. But now, after kind of being in that space for years and also adding in the quantum pieces, I think if you're going to do ketosis, you really want to get the sunlight piece in a good spot, because it's going to be very supportive of making the transition over, getting off of all the, processed foods and a lot of carbohydrates and kind of going more ketosis. And it's just going to make that transition a lot easier for people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that recommendation for sure. The last thing, maybe quickly, is this, because while Alexis has a really true medical need to be in deep ketosis, right? There's a medical need there. I have had many a client come to me who were trying to get into sustained deep ketosis year round, long, deep cold plunges, and then throwing in fasting as well, like what I would call some excessive fasting as well. And what that amounted to was some major stressors in these bodies that they
inflamed.
Right. Leptin went super low. The symptoms came back with starting to come back with a vengeance. And it's like, there is that other side of things too, right? It's about maintaining metabolic flexibility. And so once I know clients can get into ketosis and they kind of know their pattern through which what they need to eat, what their body does to get into ketosis, what pulls them out of ketosis, I tell them that there's a time on a regular basis that I want them to get out of ketosis, or I want them to do a carb up, or really increase. Typically root vegetables is what I have clients do for a period of one day, sometimes a couple of days, depending on the individual, because you have to maintain that metabolic flexibility, the ability to bounce back and forth, utilizing both fuel sources efficiently.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I did preparing for pregnancy. I did utilize keto preparing for pregnancy, but I would go, I started off, because I'd been keto carnivore for so long, with one carb up day per week. And I found that I felt better doing Saturday and Sunday. And it'd be funny because I'd check my ketones. I'd do carbs on Saturday. I'd wake up Sunday and I'd be at like a 1.0. So my body was
still in ketosis, in other words.
I was still in ketosis after having carbs Saturday, and then I'd go Sunday and have carbs, and then Monday I'd be back in by noon. Mm-hmm. So I got really good at kind of switching in and out, because I think that women, especially, your body can get stressed. You can see thyroid numbers plummet if you're not creating metabolic flexibility. My daughter, different situation. We're treating a medical condition. And so, for me, it was like, I'm trying to improve my fertility and improve my egg quality, and my hormones were pretty. So that, flex out day or bounce out day was really helpful for me. What do you think about the whole
Yeah, oh no, I agree. I think sometimes with people, life happens and they're going to naturally come out of it because there's a birthday party or something like that. So they just do it naturally. And there was a day when Alexis drank the kombucha.
Yeah, she grabbed a kombucha.
But the thing is, it's like, it doesn't really matter. And I think you listen to yourself because I'm like, I've not eaten any carbs off for about 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't feel like I need to because I come from the 55th latitude and this is the 30th. So my body and everything is just going crazy at all of the sun. So my leptin's just saying, oh, don't bother with any food, because it's like a place I've never been to the 30th latitude. So I just am gobbling up the sun.
Yeah, she's been out. She's so tan. Like, this woman is super tan.
And then I've been like cooking for Alexis.
Yeah.
I do sometimes have it, but I've not been interested whatsoever. Well, I mean, I have been a bit hungry, and then it's just been the lamb, and then there's been that mixed meat. But other than that, my brain is just saying outside. It's like, whereas sometimes your brain is like fridge.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to just listen to it. And even though my period's due tomorrow, I've not got any PMS or anything, and I need to eat some vegetables or carbs or something. I think it's my body.
She's been out in the sun and barefoot, and she slept in my yard.
Oh yeah. I know. I walk around barefoot. Actually, you raised a really good point about the cold plunge, because in the UK I haven't got the sun, so I just go in the lake, even in the morning when it's sort of 45 Fahrenheit or 10 degrees and it's dark and it's the winter. Whereas here, I haven't been in the cold plunge once because my body's saying you don't need it, and it's probably going to be a stressor rather than a benefit. Whereas in the UK, if I don't do my cold plunge, even though I swim in the lake for 45 minutes, I can't manage without it. And it is very interesting how your body tells you you need to gobble up this at this moment in time. Don't bother with that. I want this. And I think, again, I can't iterate enough about the appetite aspect of the light. If you get that right, and with POMC, we mentioned it earlier, it also breaks up into peptides that inhibit your appetite. So again, and also I think sometimes if you count how much you're eating, you think, oh no, I should be eating more. Whereas I haven't counted. And there was one day, I think we were kind of quite busy, and I ate like an egg. And then
if you want to lose weight, you can come stay at my house.
But I think it's one of those things, if you're too regimented about your macros and you eat,
like, I need to go eat 3 tablespoons of MCT oil before bed. And it's like, if you didn't naturally want that, then don't force it on yourself.
Because also the crux of the leptin aspect and the energy is, if my body thinks it's got enough energy from the sun and the grounding, it doesn't want any food electrons, and it's not going to do the whole thyroid crash because according to my body, it's got enough energy. So it's but people are too impatient to get to that phase. Like
they are. It takes time.
Years. It can be a year. And also sometimes you just can't do it fully in a particular environment. But it definitely works. And it's all this thing about, how do I restrict calories without crashing my hormones? You've got to convince your body you've got your vitamin D in check, your DHA in check, melatonin, and enough, light, and cold plunging and grounding, and then it'll permit you to eat less food electrons, and you'll lose weight without having crazy rubbishy thyroids.
Exactly.
And mood swings and not being able to sleep.
Exactly.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been super fun. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. Bye.